This video will show you how to replace the ignition coil boot kit on a Cadillac CTS with a 3.6 liter engine. You'll have 6 of these, 3 along each side of your engine. Let's get into it. Okay friend, let's get started on our job. We're going to have to remove the upper engine cover. To remove this, remove your oil cap. First, just make sure there's no miscellaneous debris that might fall inside the engine oiling system. We'll take hold of the cap, turn it counterclockwise, remove it. Of course, a quick inspection of the seal. This looks good. Let's set that aside temporarily. Continuing on, we can take hold of the cover. We're going to start lifting it up and away. We'll set that aside and reinstall the engine oil cover. Now continuing on, we are going to have to remove the upper intake plenum, but before I do any of that, I like to make sure I remove any debris from along this area. With the engine cover out of the way, I'm going to be using some compressed air. Obviously, I have hand and eye protection at all times throughout this entire process. Up along the front of the intake plenum, we're going to be dealing with this area, which is attached to the air inlet hose leading to the air filter housing. You're going to find that you have 2 clamps that we'll have to loosen. But before we loosen each of those, there is a small tube that leads to the back area here. Now I just went ahead and pulled it off of there. Typically it slides right off. Just lift it up, just a quick inspection of that. Now let's continue on to loosening those 2 clamps. When you loosen the clamps, you don't have to fully loosen them, just loosen them enough that we can move things around. We'll be using an 8mm for each of these clamps. Okay, that clamp did not separate. That's perfect. And that hose does move. Now we'll take hold of this. We're going to slide it away from the intake plenum and then lift it up and away from the air inlet tube. We'll set that aside. With that out of the way, we can see the electrical connector for our throttle body. It has a locking tab. I'm just going to press that in. You should be able to slide that out of place. Every time you disconnect an electrical connector, take a quick peek. We're looking for corrosion. If you see any, it has to be taken care of. This looks good. This plastic bracket should slide out of place. We'll pull it away. As we move up along the driver's side of the intake plenum, you have your wiring harness that we just dislodged from along the front. This should be pressed down into this small bracket. Ours is very loose, but you should just pry it right up and off of there. This can either be done by hand, or you could use a small trim tool if necessary. Now we have a metal bracket that leads up to this area right up along the top of the intake plenum. This is the stud for our upper engine cover. Use a 10mm to remove this, separating the bracket from that intake plenum. The bracket's not going to become dislodged, it's still held in place with a mounting bolt underneath. We're using our 10mm for this. Okay, get that off of there. So now if you follow this bracket down, you can see that there's an 18mm headed mounting bolt down there. Let's remove that bolt and this bracket. We'll set those aside. So I'm continuing along the driver's side of the intake plenum. I'm going to start removing this area and we'll continue making our way rearward prior to making our way over to the other side. Now as far as removing this piece here, it's actually a very long tube. It slides inside of this channel. We want to be careful not to break it. First of all, I'll make sure that it does move. As you can see, it does. Now I'm going to have to pry it out, but there's going to be a sealing O-ring inside of here. It's common for that O-ring to tear. If it does, you're going to have to replace it. So with that said, I'm going to be using a flat blade screwdriver as a prying device. I'm going to wiggle this as necessary so I can make my way in between, and we'll gently start pulling this out and away. As you can tell, this is fairly lengthy. Let's continue on rearward. So as we continue rearward, we do not need to remove this stud from the intake plenum. Let's remove this hose. This hose leads all the way over towards our brake booster. It's a vacuum hose. Squeeze the clamp. We'll slide this out of position. This hose is extremely important to make sure that it does not have any dry rot or cracks. It's a vacuum hose. You're going to have a running condition if there's an issue. I'll squeeze the clamp with some pliers. You can use an angled pick, flat blade screwdriver, whatever you need to. Just get this broken free. Slide that off of there. As I mentioned, make sure it's not cracked in any way. If it is, you're just going to want to replace it. It's not a very long hose. We'll set it aside. Continuing rearward, we have a small bracket. This is held in place with a 10mm bolt. Let's remove that. Just behind that, you have the electrical connector for your map sensor. We're not going to remove the map sensor from inside of the intake plenum. One thing I would mention about this is I've seen it plenty of time when you do try to remove these from the intake plenum, it breaks inside. Just disconnect the electrical connector and we'll move along. As far as the electrical connector, it does have one locking tab. We're just going to squeeze that in and we'll pull this out of place. Just grab onto that. No corrosion there. Now we'll continue on past the mass airflow sensor along the rear. We have another electrical connector, the locking tab's up along the top. So for this one, I'm squeezing in on my locking tab up along the top. That looks good. Okay, so we're done on this side of the intake plenum as of now. Let's go over to the other side. We're going to make our way from the front all the way along towards the rear. On the other side of the intake plenum, let's start up here. Now we're going to disconnect this line. There's actually a small locking tab just underneath. I'm going to grab onto it. I'm pressing it rearward with my index finger. That's going to unlock this. Now I can wiggle this and slide it out of position. I'll just turn this over so you can have a quick look. There's my small locking tab. It's very small. And just press it just like that. We'll set that aside. Right in this area, we have an electrical wiring harness. This should be pressed down into my intake plenum, but it is actually broken. That's okay. Typically, you just pry that up and out of position. It's really not too big of a deal. Let's continue on along the side of the intake plenum. We have a bracket for our electrical wiring harness. Use a 10mm for this bolt. 10mm here. Let's continue rearward. So as far as this tube is concerned, you've already seen it on the other side. It goes deep inside of the intake plenum, and as I mentioned on the other side, there's just a small O-ring holding this in place. Let's pry it out of here. That looks good. As you can tell, I will have to replace my O-ring. Just as I mentioned in the beginning, that's extremely common. Let's make our way rearward. Let's make our way rearward. We have our next mounting bolt, 10mm. Along the rear corner, we have another 10mm bolt with a small bracket. That's for this line. Let's go ahead and remove that. There's that one. Continuing on, you're going to find that you have 6 13mm headed mounting bolts holding the intake plenum in place. You can see 5 of them out in the open. There's a 6th one down in this area. As far as the first 5, we're going to fully remove those and set them aside. As far as the 6th mounting bolt, once we have it fully loosened, we'll be removing it with the plenum. You can tell that bolt is considerably longer than the first. Just take note of where each one of the mounting bolts goes for the installation process. This one back here. Now with that bolt loosened, we should be able to take hold of the intake plenum and we're going to lift it up and out of position. As we lift this up, just make sure nothing falls inside of the engine. Okay, so there's our bolt. Now that we have that out of the way, I'm going to remove my intake plenum gasket set. As we start lifting this up, you're going to find that you will have an alignment stud that you have to draw it up and away from. It's typically a good idea to replace gaskets whenever you remove them. At minimum, give them a close inspection and make sure they're not torn or damaged. If they are, they have to be replaced. Continuing on, we want to make sure that no miscellaneous debris makes its way inside of the intake leading into the engine. I'm just going to be using some small rags here, gently pressing them into the port, but I like to leave them up far enough that I cannot forget that they're in there during the installation process. So we'll just continue on lightly putting these in here. We just want to make sure no debris makes its way into the engine, as I mentioned. Okay. Let's continue on. Now at this point, we can gain access to pretty much any of these. The process will be the same. I'm going to do this one right here and just continue on repeating the process for all others as necessary. So for the ignition coil, you're going to have to disconnect the electrical connector. This type of electrical connector is a little bit different than most. It has a locking tab, but the ears actually make their way through the forward side. So I'm going to be grabbing onto those ears and I'm pressing them rearward. Now I can pull out on this and I can start sliding the connector out and away. As I slide it out and away, it should become more unlocked. Of course, a quick inspection for corrosion and we'll set that aside. Now you're going to find you have a 10mm bolt holding your ignition coil in place. Let's remove that. Now let's take hold of that ignition coil. We'll give it a little twist and lift it up and out of position. There it is, friend. Now on the bench, we can start the removal process of our ignition coil boots. You're going to find that you have one at the very tip of the ignition coil. This one also houses a small spring. As we make our way up towards the base, we have a second ignition coil boot. Let's start removing the pair. I'm going to start down at the very end here. I'm using a small pocket screwdriver. You can use pretty much anything as a small prying device. If you were looking closely at this, you want to try to get underneath the boot and separate it from the ignition coil. So I'm just going like this, and now I'll just gently twist once everything's broken free, and we should be able to slide this out of place. You can see it's starting to separate here. Inside of my ignition coil boot, we can see my small spring. Let's continue on to the next boot. Same process here, pocket screwdriver, start prying it out of place. Once you have it broken free, a gentle twist, we should be able to slide this off of here. You can use some lubricant if necessary. Prior to installing our brand new ignition coil boot kit, a thorough inspection of the ignition coil itself. Confirm that nothing's damaged in any way. Everything looks good on this one. After inspecting that ignition coil, I'm going to rest it like this. I'm going to continue on with some dielectric lubricant right along the base area where my upper grommet would sit. Now that I have lubricant on there, I'm going to continue on with my new boot. We'll make sure we have it in the proper orientation. Now my coil is upside down, but this would be the area that would be facing down towards our valve cover, and this small ridge would be inside of our ignition coil up along the top. Mine's upside down, so I'm just going to take this and we'll slide it all the way down as far as possible. We'll give it a gentle twist. Now, by adding that dielectric lubricant inside of this area, it's going to help prevent moisture from seeping down inside where the spark plug would be located. We're going to continue on with our brand new spring. Rest that in the tip of the ignition coil. A little more dielectric lubricant. We're just going along this area here next. This is where the lower boot would sit. Keep that spring in place. Let's get this on here. Pressing it on as far as possible with a gentle twist. Just a little bit more dielectric lubricant along this area next. This is what would go over the spark plug. That'll help it slide into place. Let's get this back over to the vehicle. Now, as we slide our ignition coil down into place, we need to press it on top of the spark plug, but we're also aligning our mounting bolt port. Once you have that in place, continue on to tightening the 10mm headed mounting bolt and torque it to 89 inch-pounds. It's not very much. Double check to confirm it's properly secured in place. The ignition coil should not move around in any way. Now at this point, just go ahead and repeat the process for all others as necessary. Now let's focus along the center area here. We need to clean around all 6 of these ports so we can prepare to install our gaskets. I'm using my plastic flat blade eraser. We'll scrape out and away from the ports. Just a quick wipe as I make my way around. We're looking for any raised areas or debris. Just try to remove as much as possible. That one looks good. Do the same for all. Now I have the intake plenum up on a bench so we can have a quick look at what would be the bottom side of it. This is where those gaskets that we just installed on the intake, on the engine itself, would sit up against. So of course it needs to be a clean mating surface. We'll use our flat blade razor. We're scraping out and away. We'll use some parts cleaner directly on a rag. A quick wipe and a close inspection. This looks good. Continue on. This is a very important step. Now we're reaching inside of this area and we're going to remove any protective layer that we added into here. Of course, make sure each and every port is clean and free of any miscellaneous debris. If you were to forget even one of these inside of this area, you're going to cause some serious damage to your engine. Just one more quick inspection up along the area that we have already cleaned to confirm there's no debris, and let's continue on with our gaskets. As we get these into place, we have an alignment stud here. Bring it down. Now we're attempting to align where all of our mounting bolt ports would be. This is looking good. Same thing on the other side. Perfect. Now we'll start bringing the intake plenum into place. As you remember during the removal process, the far rearward bolt could not be removed prior to removing the plenum with the bolt. So with that said, we're going to be installing that bolt now. We'll just slide it straight through. Now we can get this in position. A quick note about this, as we start bringing the intake plenum in place, you want to be careful not to shift your gaskets out of place. Otherwise, clearly it's not going to seal. Just line this up. That looks good. Before you go any further with any of the mounting hardware, pay attention for those gaskets. Typically, you can at least lift this up a little bit and have a quick peek along either side just to confirm the gaskets are still in the proper placement. Now it's time for our other 5 mounting bolts. The 4 longest bolts will be the 4 center. The smaller bolt is going on the forward side. The first thing we're going to do is start each of them in. After that, we'll lightly bottom them out and torque them in a specific sequence. Now we're going to snug these up and torque them. When we go to snug or torque, you're going to start by making a cross, and then you'll make your way outward towards either outside end. This one. They're all bottomed out. Let's go ahead and torque them in that same crisscross manner. Let's make our way back here. There's that one. With this completely torqued down, let's continue on along the rearward side. We do have a couple of electrical connectors. We have one on the very center on the rear, then we'll make our way along the driver's side before making our way towards the passenger side. As far as the electrical connector along the rear, that's going to be the smaller of the 2 connectors here. We'll get this aligned with the corresponding area, press it in, listen for a click. There we go. We'll just double check, make sure that's secured in place. Does not fall off. Let's continue on here. For this next electrical connector, the locking tab is going to be facing upward. Line it up, press it in. Audible click from that as well. That feels good. Now in this area, the bracket's pretty much already resting in place, but either way, you just want to bring it over here, reinstall your 10mm bolt to make sure it's nice and tight. Now we'll reinstall the clamp in the same positioning as where we had removed it from. Now let's get this tube in place. We're going to slide it in. It just has to be at the proper angle, otherwise it might feel like it binds. Press it in, listen for a click, make sure that's secured as well. Now we have this other tube. This just has a plastic clip here. Line it up, press it on there. Let's move along the passenger side now. Now typically I would like to start along the back side, but I do want to mount something before we go ahead and get this in place. So we're just bringing our valve over. We'll make sure we have the bracket in the proper orientation. Now we can start in our 10mm headed mounting bolt and snug it up. Now we can make our way to that rearward corner. We have our small bracket on this tube, 10mm bolt here. There we are. Now we can insert the tube into the plenum. Just gently flex it as necessary. We'll guide it into the proper positioning. Now we can make our way to the forward connector. We'll just make sure we have it in the unlocked position. You can tell exactly which way it has to go. Looking in here, you do have 4 slots. If you were looking at the opposite side of the connector, you have 4 locating tabs. You really can't mix it up. Line it up, press it in towards each other. We're squeezing, locking it in with our red lock, and of course making sure it's secure. Let's get that in place, install the 10mm bolt, and make sure that's tight. Now as we make our way towards the front of the intake plenum, before we install our plastic tube, we do want to secure our wiring harness. During the removal, you remember that ours was damaged, and that's okay because we're just going to use a wire tie straight through the port where this should go into. We essentially just want to make sure it's secured so it doesn't get damaged while we're driving down the road. Just trim off any excess. We'll dispose of that properly. Have our small tube, line it up, press it on. Audible click and a light tug. Now we have our forward bracket. This is going to go in and behind this ear. I'm just going to start in the upper hardware, but we'll leave it loose. Now we have the larger bolt. This bolt will come through from the front towards the rear through that bracket into the engine. At this point, let's go ahead and snug and torque this bolt. The torque for it will be 48 foot-pounds. Just use our 18mm to snug that up, torque it. Get my 18mm for this. Now let's make our way to the upper hardware. Now we'll secure the wiring harness on this side, line it up, press it in. So let's have a quick look at this prior to installing it. We have this port where the intake plenum would slide into. Down in this area is an area that could be easily forgotten. You do want to make sure you resecure the hose once this is in place. And then of course we have this port, which is where the air inlet tube leading to the air filter housing would be. Let's get this in place. The first thing I like to do is align it with my intake plenum here. I'm going to press it in as far as possible, and then of course we'll tighten our clamp. Once it's fully secured in place, we'll continue on to the next hose. When you attempt to tighten these clamps, if you find that you over-tighten it and it skips a tooth, you have to replace the clamp. You might not be making good contact, in which case dirty air might be making its way inside of the engine. Let's continue on. Same process here. Let's just line that up. We'll press it on as far as possible. Double check to make sure it's seated all the way around. This looks good. We'll tighten that clamp. Perfect. It's time for the hose. Now, as far as this hose is concerned, we have to make sure it has the proper routing. We have it coming along where the oil fill cap is, comes over the valve cover, It'll come under this coolant hose and then along the backside of the power steering reservoir down into the proper position. Line it up, press it on, make sure it's secured. If it slides off easily, you can use a wire tie. We're getting ready to install the upper engine cover. We have to remove the engine oil cap. Now let's get that engine cover in place. When we bring it over towards the engine, up along the top of the intake plenum, you will have several studs. We have the one that we just removed and installed. You have the other two along the backside there. Let's get this in place. As I start bringing this down, the easiest way to line this up is to align the circular port for the oil fill. After that, just make sure it looks as though it's straight. We'll give it a wiggle. It feels like it wants to settle in, so I'm going to press it down. Now I'll just give it a quick wiggle here. We do want to make sure it's secured along all four corners. Let's get that oil cap in place. Double check, make sure that's secured so no moisture or debris make its way inside of your oil system. Okay friend, we finished our installation. Now the next thing you have to do is start the vehicle and let it run. We want to make sure you don't have a check engine light and no running condition. Aside from that, close the hood and take your vehicle for a road test. Thanks for watching.
When only the best will do, demand TRQ. The only company that lets you view before you do. TRQ is committed to offering the highest quality aftermarket auto parts that are engineered for peace of mind. Thanks for using and viewing with TRQ.